All right, good to have you with us here on the Thursday edition of the South African Morning. Let's talk about one of the most ridiculous international stories that as far as police are concerned. Hawaii police have concluded that the fatal shooting of Lindani Myeni was justified.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's the thing. Actually, it's exactly that. No charges against the officers involved will be filed. Now, the month-long investigations found the two officers had no choice but to shoot the former South African rugby player 3 times.
According to this body cam footage, there's a bit of it there. The officers tried multiple times to subdue him. Myeni's wife has filed a wrongful death lawsuit claiming that police discriminated against an unarmed black man.
However, Gareth, investigators also say there was no evidence that race played a role in this case. 2 of the officers, we understand, have actually returned to work, and a 3rd is still recovering. So with that being said, let's bring you more on this. I mean, we're now joined by the Myeni family lawyer. That is Jim Bickerton. Jim, thank you for your time and good morning to you. Obviously, not pleased, South Africans, I'm sure, but even more devastating is the Myeni family having to read that their loved one's shooting or death was actually justified by the police. I mean, when I read, excuse me, the statement there released by, Steve Alm, which is the prosecuting attorney there in Honolulu, he said that actually we need to almost, give respect both to the family for losing their loved one, but also take into consideration that the police were rather forced to shoot and take someone's life, and they have to live with that for the rest of their life. What do you make of this statement?
Well, it was very difficult to have to hear that, and it really isn't something that we agree with. Now, we are civil lawyers, and we're bringing a civil suit, so we're not experts in criminal law, but we certainly know a little bit about it. And from our perspective, the prosecutor didn't even address the main question, the elephant in the room, so to speak.
With that being said, then what are your options? I mean, with the family, what is Lindani Myeni's family's options are? Will they raise the case? Are there plans to actually pursue this case even further, given what the final, prosecutor statement has mentioned?
Oh, absolutely. So your viewers understand, we have 2, and I think it's the same in South Africa, we have 2 separate systems. They're completely separate. There's the criminal system, which decides whether or not a police officer would be charged and go to prison for what they did. And then there's the civil system, which decides whether they owe compensation to the family for what they did. And that's the case. The second one is the one that we're handling. There's nothing in the prosecutor's decision today that affects us, and it doesn't in any way slow us down. In fact, if you want to look on the bright side of things, we had been unable to get certain evidence before because the prosecutor claimed he needed it to make this investigation.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't use very much of it because he didn't interview anyone and he didn't do anything except look at what HPD already had. He looked at the same material that we've all looked at. But now that he's officially closed his investigation, we get all of that material. So we will get the written statements made by the witnesses. We will get the dispatch call to find out what the police officers were told about Lindani's activity. We'll get all kinds of information that we didn't have access to before, and I think that will only strengthen our case.
With that being said, you did mention beforehand that you did not obviously agree that the shooting was justified. I just want to make a couple of, notes in terms of what has been mentioned here. It seemed, according to the prosecutor, Lindani Myeni was very much well aware that he was, of course, engaging with the Honolulu police officers by virtue of them wearing, their uniform, saying that they tried to taser him. That didn't work out, and then left them with that very much, tragic, unfortunate decision to actually shoot him. One officer shooting in self-defense, the other in defense of the other. What then is your counter-argument based on what they have to say?
Well, the contention that he made that, obviously he knew, there's no evidence for that. In fact, the evidence is to the contrary. Who asks the question, who are you, if they know who they are? It doesn't make any sense. Now, there are 2 or 3 things that he didn't do. And one of the things that your viewers may not know yet, we've seen evidence of even the police officer who was Garrick Orozco, who ordered him to lie on the ground without saying he was a police officer. Later, that officer is heard on tape saying, I couldn't see anything. He had the flashlight in his hand and he couldn't see. Lindani said, "Who are you?" And it's unquestioned that all three officers had to use flashlights. So if it was such a bright, clear situation illuminated by streetlights, why is all that happening? Why are they using flashlights? Why is Lindani saying, "Who are you?" Why is the police officer himself not able to see? The prosecutor never addressed that question. He just assumed and stated it as a fact with no evidence that Lindani could tell. One of the things that we get to do in the civil lawsuit is to actually recreate the conditions.
Right.
And we will certainly be going out on a moonless night near a street light, but not under it, with a high-intensity tactical flashlight and shining it in someone's eyes and saying, "Can you tell what color my uniform is? Can you tell if I'm a police officer or the security guard of that yelling lady behind me?" That's the kind of question that we think Mr. Alm should have asked, because if Lindani did not know they were police officers, and if they didn't identify themselves, which is clear, then his defense of himself against these unknown assailants was lawful, and that makes the attack on him unlawful without an announcement of police. So by skipping over the whole question of whether he really did know they were police and just saying it as a fact, he swept the main issue of the case aside. And to us, it tells us he hasn't really dealt honestly or fairly with the facts of this case. Now, there are reasons for that, and I would speculate that one of them is that he's already indicted police officers in another recent shooting. He was supported by the police officers union in the last election, and he needs police officers every single day to come down to court and testify in the hundreds and hundreds of other cases that he has. I think that if he had indicted in both cases, it would have eventually brought his office to a halt because the police officers wouldn't be cooperating with him. So he had political pressure, which I don't think he would acknowledge, to not return any charges in.
We'll be following this story quite closely. But, Jim, thank you for your time. Lindani Myeni's family lawyer there, Jim Bickerton, giving us an update on the case. All right, we'll leave it there.